Okay, thank you. I knew I sat in the wrong chair. I've done a couple, I've tried to visualize, I'm kind of even though I'm running a radio network right now, I tend to be kind of a visual person internally, and I tend to think of actually radio in some ways as the most visual of the mediums because it forces you to internalize what it is that you're listening coming in your ears, and your mind then makes up the visualization. So I think that's helpful, and I think it's also helpful to be kind of to use metaphor a lot in trying to visualize things. So I like the whole mapping idea. And I'm trying to remember actually when I did this thing. I think it was originally for a discussion we had at the NPR board that I put that together, and I later put it in my blog. So that's kind of one way of looking at the difference between the old media and the new media. And it's labeled public media, but it probably applies quite well to the commercial side of things as well. We are our legacy comes actually from the movie industry in a lot of ways. If you kind of go back to, and that probably stems from the theater. So it's the notion that we're going to put on a show. We have a story in mind that we want to tell, and we assemble the best possible way to tell that, and then put a long series of credits at the end. That's kind of our legacy. And somewhere along the line, people decided in the early 20s, or in Madison, Wisconsin, they would say in the late teens, to create something that was educational or that had public value from that, and put radio stations on the air. Those were among the first radio stations. There were many, many, many more radio stations in the 20s than actually survived the 20s or even 30s. There was a very high infant mortality rate among radio stations in the 1920s, all of them educational. But we somehow recovered and built radio up, and public media got built up public radio rather got built up most dramatically after television came along and supposedly was going to put us out of business, but actually came around, and public radio has kind of exploded in that time. So how does that impact us? Because we are now in an entirely different mode of operation, where the legacy of centrally telling a story and distributing it to an anxiously awaiting public is no longer the case. So I was trying to visualize a world in which everybody had every role. So everybody can be a producer, everybody can be an aggregator, everybody can be a retailer in this world, and it is actually happening. So there's a kind of one way of visualizing what it is we're doing, and it's a very confusing world economically, because you can't always make money at every level of the thing. I've made until somebody told me that I shouldn't have advertising on my blog anymore, since I had Google AdSense on there, because I just kind of was curious as to how much I could make, and I averaged like $40 a month on that. And my blog cost me $20, so it wasn't a high profit thing. But we have lots of ways of kind of visualizing. So that's one way to visualize it. And the other way I was trying to visualize it was in layers. We have why are we doing things, what are we doing, and where we're doing it. So in the case of public media, the way I like to verbalize it is to say we're enhancing human understanding. It's kind of a heady way to think about it, but I think it's an accurate one. The next layer is what we do. For NPR, it's mostly journalism, but we do aggregate other programs in that regard. And then there's where we do it, and historically that's just for us been on the radio, but increasingly now we have 3 videographers on staff. We have almost 100 people, counting temps, doing our web activities, and of course, radio is still where our gross tonnage still is. We have public radio in general has about 11.5 billion contact hours a year. That's one person listening to the radio for 1 hour. So it's a huge impact still. Internet's coming on very strong though, so I think conceivably in my lifetime that's going to have a much bigger share than it does now. So I think that's my way of visualizing it.